going to hurt him in 2024, and an indictment is absolutely chaotic. Now, Trump is trying to fundraise off of this. There's a good, nice, concise CNBC article. Trump campaign uses newly restored Facebook page to fundraise off of the indictment. They have the official election defense fund with $1,000 match, which of course we never know if it's real or if it's not. The copy was as follows: the radical left, the enemy of the hardworking men and women of this country, have indicted me in a disgusting witch hunt. Please make a contribution of $47 or more by 11:59 p.m. to help defend our movement from the never-ending witch hunts during these dark times, and we'll send you your very own I Stand with President Trump t-shirt for free, which, as we know, that could become a collectible item. I wish I had stocked up on the Trump knives, by the way, before he was indicted. I'm sure they've just skyrocketed in value. So realistically, the grift simply continues. This has been a grift for a very long time, and it's not going to stop with the indictment. It wouldn't. If Trump somehow ended up in jail, which is not going to happen, I think the grift would continue from there. And we are going to be watching the next 48 hours very, very closely. Is there a gag order? Does the fundraising continue? Do Trump's protesters actually come out and seem even remotely interested in defending him? Or is it just a couple dozen people at Mar-a-Lago? All of it will be live on our YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, and it is going to be quite a couple of days. As many of my viewers and listeners, of course, know, I have many family members who work in the field of mental health, and I think one of the most important things that we can do is to both increase access and reduce stigma when it comes to mental health services. And that's why I am thrilled that one of our sponsors today is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it is 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists, an important word, therapists, who can help you with a wide range of issues. You answer a few questions about your needs and your preferences, and BetterHelp will match you with a therapist that meets your needs. You can then talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable. Could be text, could be chat, phone, video call. You can message your therapist anytime. You can schedule live sessions when it's convenient. And if your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but it's on your schedule and it's at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Pacman. That's betterhelp.com/Pacman for 10% off your first month. The link is in the podcast notes. Let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene on 60 Minutes. Dozens of you wrote to me. As many people wrote to me as the number that protested for Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Dozens of you wrote to me and said, David, what is your take about 60 Minutes interviewing Marjorie Taylor Greene? They are platforming a lunatic. They are pretending as though they're normalizing the idea of Marjorie Taylor Greene as someone who should be in government. It's just a matter of, do we agree about her views, rather than making her out to be the dangerous extremist who has no business in a position of power. I tweeted yesterday, I understand the concerns and I want to see the interview first. And the reason I said I want to see the interview first is I've long advocated for something called responsible platforming. And by responsible platforming, I mean, it's not about who you interview, it's how you interview them. And so, for example, when I have someone on the show who is explaining nuclear fission to us as a subject matter expert, I handle that interview differently than when I interviewed, for example, a white nationalist neo-Nazi Richard Spencer. If I'm going to have Richard Spencer on, I need to be prepared to make sure that my audience understands his extremist ideas are dangerous, that they're bogus, and so on and so forth. I think people get this. The point is the interview's appropriateness is evaluated based on how the interview is handled. And it wasn't handled the best by Leslie Stahl, but it wasn't the end of the world. Overall, I don't like that. I think the interview did normalize Marjorie Taylor Greene to a degree. That's where I come down. It wasn't overall a softball interview, but there were moments that weren't so good. Let's look at just a couple of moments. Here's one question about whether Marjorie Taylor Greene has deliberately styled herself after Donald Trump.
How much have you styled yourself?
And why don't we have audio here? I'm not sure. Who is? We do have audio. My headphone has become unplugged. Let me plug that back in. Beautiful. All right, let's take it from the top.
How much have you styled yourself after Donald Trump? People say.
And by the way, this look from Marjorie Taylor Greene, one thing I want to say, and I won't harp on it, is Greene's attitude the entire interview was sort of like, this isn't a serious show. Leslie Stahl isn't serious, and I'm above this. This is just me placating the fake news. And it was pretty disgusting, but let's not harp on that.
That you are Trump in high heels.
I didn't intentionally style myself after President Trump, but I can see how people draw those similarities. We both come from the same industry, construction. I also have pretty much a plain speaking style.
Yeah.
And so does he.
Okay. So a little bit fluffy. One of the better moments.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Today, the Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident. He will have an initial appearance at the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts.
That is Attorney General Merrick Garland on Thursday announcing the arrest of the 21-year-old accused of leaking classified Pentagon documents and posting them online to a gamer chat on the Discord platform. The leak detailed intelligence assessments of allies and adversaries, including on the state of war in Ukraine and the challenges Kyiv and Moscow face as the conflict is at a stalemate. Teixeira reportedly served in a junior position, but somehow had access to the Joint Worldwide Intelligence System, an internal Defense Department computer network for top secret information. It's still not clear what level of security clearance Teixeira had, but his access would have let him read and print some secret documents, which is apparently what he did. Wow. Meanwhile, Donald Trump answered questions under oath for over 7 hours on Thursday. It was his second deposition for New York Attorney General Letitia James' lawsuit over his company's business practices. Now, during his first appearance in August, Trump invoked his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination over 400 times. But this time, according to one of his lawyers, Christopher Heiss, Trump described, quote, in detail, his extraordinary business success. I hope he knows that lying under oath in a deposition is a crime for which he could go to prison. Just saying. Anyway, Trump's motorcade was met by a pretty vocal crowd who welcomed him back to New York City in quintessential New York style. Now, this case is unrelated to recent criminal charges Trump faces over hush money payments to a porn star, and unrelated to the case about his taking classified documents from the White House and the latest revelations that he's been showing this classified material to visitors at Mar-a-Lago. To be continued. Meanwhile, Florida is falling further into fascist territory. The Florida House on Thursday approved legislation banning abortion 6 weeks into a pregnancy. That's before most women even know they're pregnant. The vote was 70-40, mostly along party lines. The governor signed the bill at 11 p.m. with no media present and obviously no public ceremony. Just lovely. This near total 6-week ban now will only take effect if the Florida Supreme Court rejects a pending challenge to the state's existing 15-week ban. It's just horrific. The Justice Department is now set to take an emergency dispute over the medication abortion drugs to the Supreme Court. But back to Florida for a minute, where the gods must be really angry. Fort Lauderdale experienced what officials are calling a 1 in 1,000 year rainfall event, the rainiest day in our history. On Wednesday, the downpour prompted emergency rescues, forced drivers to abandon cars, closed schools, which remain closed, and shut down the airport. Most of the region got more than a foot of rain, with Fort Lauderdale recording 25.9 inches in under 24 hours. Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport finally reopened Friday morning at 9 a.m. after being closed for almost 2 days due to the historic flooding. Well, it was bound to happen, and it'll keep happening. Oh, and by the way, more than 100 temperature records could be broken across the Midwest and Northeast on Friday, as some cities brace for temperatures as much as 30 degrees above normal. Well, that tangled web being spun by Clarence Thomas over at the Supreme Court appears to be growing. Now, ProPublica, who broke the original story about the Texas billionaire and Republican megadonor Harlan Crow, who's been showering the Thomases with lavish luxury vacations worth millions of dollars. Now they're reporting that one of the companies owned by him bought several properties in Savannah, Georgia, from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and his relatives in 2014. The company then became the landlord of Thomas's mother, who lived in a one-story, two-bedroom house. Soon after the sale, the company spent tens of thousands of dollars renovating the house, repairing the roof and the carport, installing a new fence and gates. You get the idea. Well, a federal disclosure law put into effect after Watergate, requires officials, including Supreme Court justices, to disclose most real estate sales. But I guess Clarence Thomas thinks that the law doesn't apply to him. He didn't disclose the sales to Crow, and as we already learned, didn't disclose the luxury vacations that he is.
Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Growing outrage over Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and his financial ties to a real estate mogul. Public records obtained by the nonprofit journalism outlet ProPublica appear to show billionaire Harlan Crow purchased 3 properties in Savannah, Georgia from the Thomas family in 2014. Among them, the single-story home where Thomas's mother had been living and where the conservative justice spent part of his childhood.
That is the worst place I've ever lived. My all-encompassing word is gross. I mean, it was putrid.
Crow reportedly paying over $133,000 for the home and 2 vacant lots, significantly more than ProPublica reports for other properties that Crow purchased on the same block. Just $40,000 for a pair of buildings bought a year earlier. In a statement to ABC News, Crow said the properties were bought at a market rate with the intention to one day create a public museum at the Thomas home dedicated to telling the story of our nation's second black Supreme Court justice. Either way, Thomas now faces legal questions after failing to report the purchases on financial disclosure forms.
Whoops.
Although Supreme Court justices are not bound by any code of ethics, a decades-old federal law requires disclosure of financial transactions over $1,000. That includes real estate sales.
Whether or not this type of ethics violation is going to actually result in any kind of penalty is a big question. This is really, we're in uncharted waters here.
If you were a normal government official, there's an entire sort of ethics infrastructure to enforce these rules. But one of the big questions here is whether anyone actually has the power to enforce the law when it comes to Supreme Court justices.
Thomas's ties to Crow run deep. He's called the GOP megadonor a dear personal friend. ProPublica's earlier reporting of Crow's funding of years of luxury travel and vacations is already raising questions. The justice said in a statement last week he was advised that this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was not reportable. Justice Thomas has not commented on this latest report, but congressional Democrats are already calling for an investigation. Others are calling for him to step down.
Okay, I'll take both. I mean, really, why is it a question if somebody breaks the law and they're sitting on the Supreme Court as to whether or not you can prosecute them for breaking the law? You know, we went through this with the presidency too, right? We went through all that, sitting president, he could actually kill somebody and, you can't indict a sitting president. Now we're finding out, that extends over to the Supreme Court too. Why? You can bribe them. You can actually say, I got your mother. What? Yes, I got your mother. This Harlan Crow dude, okay, we found out that Harlan Crow was paying, not only that he collects Nazi paraphernalia, and that he has a garden of evil where he has statues of every autocrat that ever autocrated in the world, right? All over his lawn there, he's got statuary. Like Mao and Lenin, and these guys really are, a piece of work. But anyway, this Harlan Crow guy, so now we have another name besides for the Koch brothers. One of them's dead, so we only have the Koch brother. But now we have new names. We have names of donors. We have names of people who have been purchasing our government, have been purchasing our Supreme Court, have been purchasing the presidency, have been purchasing the House of Representatives and the Senate. So now we have some names. Hold that in your head for a minute, okay? We'll come back to what to do now that we know the names. All right. So the scheme here was exactly what Sheldon Whitehouse said, but we didn't have names. It was dark money. Remember, it was dark money that was, capturing the court, that was corrupting the court. Something was rotten at the court. Everybody understood who was, a fair arbiter of what we were seeing. Starting with, Mitch McConnell holding Merrick Garland's seat open for 11 stinking months because Obama should not be able to appoint a Supreme Court justice with only 1 year left in his term. But Amy Coney Barrett could be put on the Supreme Court with like 8 weeks to the election. Okay, so we know something was rotten. We understood that something was rotten. And now we see that the name of the person who actually purchased for himself one Justice Clarence Thomas is Harlan Crow, because we found out that he has been giving Ginny and Clarence more than triple Clarence's annual income in vacation activities. He's been giving Clarence Thomas more than 3 times what Clarence Thomas makes off of our dime. Yes, we pay him off of our dime as a Supreme Court justice in vacations, in super yacht trips around Europe, in, stays at his, compound in upstate New York, in, all kinds of travel, all kinds of luxury, And now we're finding out that he actually purchased Clarence Thomas's mother's house, and she's 94 years old today, still alive and still living in the house that Harlan Crow purchased. I don't know what that video of Clarence saying that was the most gross place I ever lived, it was putrid, because the photo that they showed has absolutely nothing to do with the house that Clarence Thomas was apparently raised in. First of all, he was raised in his mother's house for a little while, and then he moved to Grandpa's house, right? He actually wrote a book about it, my grandfather's son, or some weird familial, thing. But that photo has nothing to do with the house that I just saw in the purchase report, right? Anyway, the purchase now puts Clarence Thomas in an interesting and unusual position, okay? Because there is one law that applies to Supreme Court justices, just one. There's just the one. Every other court has ethics rules. Every other court has conflict of interest rules, meaning that if somebody supports organizations or somebody actually gives money to organizations or is in charge of organizations or has business in front of the court through those organizations or themselves, if they have business in front of the court in any way, shape, or form, you're supposed to recuse yourself, but Clarence can't find that in writing, so he doesn't recuse himself when indeed there is, a live case in front of him having to do with his own stinking wife. Okay, so we can't really expect much from him. But the law is so lacking in this arena, but there is one. There is one law. And the law has to do with real estate. Isn't that something? Now, you may or may not remember that Harlan Crow inherited a real estate business from his daddy, okay? And that's how Harlan Crow became so freaking rich. But he's a real estate magnate, just like Trump inherited from his father, right? And his sons will inherit from him. This is old real estate money. And Harlan Crow owns a real estate empire. And so, of course, it was probably a natural idea for him to say, hey, I know a good way where I could put money in your pocket and take care of your mother for you, which is just so bizarre. And so he bought the house that Clarence Thomas said was so gross and so putrid for $133,000, and he bought 2 other lots, empty lots, on the block And one of those lots he built a house on, okay? Harlan Crow built a house on it, a nice 2-story contemporary house, and gave it to a police officer to live in. So Clarence Thomas's mother is living in a house where Harlan Crow is her landlord. We don't know if she pays rent to him or not, or if he gives her a free ride. We don't know. Clarence Thomas was by law required to report any real estate transaction over $1,000. That doesn't include his primary residence. This is not his primary residence. This is his mother's primary residence. And the 2 empty lots, which Clarence Thomas, in previous disclosures in the 1980s and in the 1990s, disclosed he owned a 1/3 share in, split between him, his brother, and his mother. Well, now his brother is dead. Sorry about that, Clarence. And Harlan goes and buys this and the lots, subsequently sells the lots. Clarence never reports any of this, and it's the one law that he needs to comply with. It's a post-Watergate law that requires justices and other officials, but justices, to disclose details of real estate transactions over $1,000 that do not include their primary residence. Now, previously, he did. Now, he doesn't. Why would that be?
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
My city's daily newspaper has gotten so emaciated it should be in hospice care. Its front section is down to 6 pages, half of which are cheap ads, and nearly all of its articles are out-of-date cut-and-paste pieces bought from out-of-state content providers. This embarrassment, put out by the Gannett chain of over 1,100 cadaverous papers, pretends to be the news source for Austin, a vibrant city of 1 million people and the capital of the second-largest state in America. Gannett, owned by a multi-billion-dollar Japanese hedge fund, profits by buying up local papers, firing most of the news staff, raising prices, selling off the paper's assets, then killing the paper. If your town's publication is now a Gannett property, look to Salinas, California for its future. The 152-year-old Salinas Californian was this important region's main news artery until its new hedge fund owners started hacking. The paper was down to 1 reporter last December, but that lone journalist quit, and the Californian is now a newspaper without reporters, meaning no coverage of elections, city hall, sports, police, workplace issues, etc. The Salinas paper is technically alive, overseen until recently by another Gannett paper located 300 miles away. Now, says the chain's comically named Center for Community Journalism, Salinas residents can get their news by reading Gannett's national paper, USA Today. This is Jim Hightower saying, actually, Gannett's bosses are making major investments in themselves. CEO Mike Reed's salary this year is $8 million, and the global chain's owners will spend $100 million for a stock buyback scheme that will artificially jack up their own wealth. This is a blockbuster story of real news affecting real people and democracy itself. So how many Gannett newspapers do you guess are covering it?
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1873. That was the day the single most deadly incident of the Reconstruction era occurred, known as the Colfax Massacre. As many as 150 black Republicans in Colfax, Louisiana, were slaughtered by white supremacists determined to destroy advances made by the formerly enslaved. Results of the 1872 gubernatorial election in Louisiana had been hotly contested. President Ulysses S. Grant ordered federal troops in to support the Republican winner, William Pitt Kellogg. A number of black radical Republicans had also won or retained local and state political positions. William Ward, a black Civil War veteran and militia leader, had won a seat in the state legislature. By the beginning of April, he and others were being threatened with attacks on the Grant Parish Courthouse in Colfax. Colfax, and lynchings by defeated white Southern Democrats. Desperate for backup, Ward and others left for New Orleans to appeal for federal reinforcement. On the holy Easter Sunday, ex-Confederates, Klansmen, and Democrats rode into Colfax armed with guns, rifles, knives, and a cannon. 150 black Republicans were ready to defend their courthouse. Fighting raged on for hours, but eventually black Republicans were forced to retreat and then were massacred. 97 whites were indicted on federal conspiracy charges under the 1870 Enforcement Act, designed to enforce civil rights and root out Klan terror. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and resulted in the ruling United States versus Cruikshank, which essentially gutted the Enforcement Act. Of the 97 indicted, 9 were tried and 3 were initially found guilty. The Cruikshank ruling eventually overturned their convictions and effectively marked the legal end of Reconstruction. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Okay, this is a flashback. This is from 2020. And this is my the guy that I hope to meet in heaven one day, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, telling you something's really rotten at the Supreme Court.
There is increasing evidence that something is rotten across that lawn and across First Street at the United States Supreme Court. What is the evidence of that? Well, the first thing I would suggest is the amount of anonymous dark money influencers swirling around the court. I have spent a good deal of my professional life around appellate courts. I have never seen, nor does the history of the Supreme Court evidence, anything like what is taking place right now with dark money influencers swirling like eels around that court. How do they do it? Well, they're involved in the selection process through a group called the Federalist Society, which takes large anonymous dark money contributions and controls the selection of judges. How do we know it controls the selection of judges? Donald Trump has said so. The Wall Street Journal has said this was a subcontracting operation. A subcontracting operation, and it worked. It is not a good thing when the selection of our Supreme Court is subcontracted out to a private group that then takes multi-million-dollar anonymous donations. It shouldn't be hard for members to understand that that is a dangerous set of facts. Then you go on to the campaigns for those selected nominees, and you see more anonymous donors writing checks for as much as $17 million. I can't write a check for $17 million. I don't know anybody here who can. The number of donors who can write a check for $17 million is very small.
And now we're
and the
starting
number who would
to know.
want to is even smaller.
Yeah, and so it's not a big pool that, the money swims in. And now we're starting to have names that actually represent the people who can and want to write checks to own Supreme Court justices, to have them in their pocket, a la The Godfather, okay? I mean, it's so unbelievable. And they're buying their mother's houses. They're literally, they're becoming the Supreme Court justice's mother's landlord of their elderly mother. It's like that scene in Goodfellas where he goes, I told you not to buy anything. I told you not to buy anything. Oh, but I bought it in my mother's name. I bought that. She loves that car. Pink Cadillac, remember that? And he said, well, I told you not to go out and buy anything. Well, so, but it's in my mother's name. This is what they do. This is how the money gets funneled through. This is so disgusting. This is so heinous. And if it wasn't for independent journalism like ProPublica, we wouldn't know a damn thing about it, because not only is it done on the sly, but there's very little in the law to hold anybody accountable for taking bribes on the Supreme Court. The only one law that we have is the one that applies to real estate, not your primary residence. And they managed to break that law too. They managed to actually do it. And ProPublica was, was able to actually, it was a kid, it was a bunch of kids. Oh, well, they're not kids. Justin Elliott, Josh Kaplan, and Alex Majerski actually worked very long on these pages to report to you that Harlan Crow not only paid for the vacation activities that were 3 times the amount that Clarence Thomas makes in a year, and these are yearly vacations that he, is making available to Clarence, Harlan Crow is, but that they're also involved in buying, his mother's house and some vacant lots on the block, and then building a house on one of the vacant lots and having a police officer live in that house to protect Clarence's mother. From what? From what in Savannah, Georgia? What are you protecting? I guess they knew that one day somebody would find out the name of the person on the deed. Somebody would find out the name of the person who purchased Clarence Thomas's mother's house while she's still alive. And she's still alive. Okay, she's 94. She still lives in that house. And they would say the name out loud, and, apparently people might show up and want to protest. Peacefully, of course, but might want to show up and protest. And so they put a police officer right down the street. Isn't that special? So Harlan Crow bought a string of properties on a very quiet residential street in Savannah, Georgia, and is now Justice Clarence Thomas's mother's landlord. Now, what does that sound like? I got mom, better, rule for my friend, better, and here's why it's so unbelievable today. Because today, all eyes are on the Supreme Court. All eyes are on the Supreme Court today. Why are all eyes on the Supreme Court today? Because today is the deadline for the one lone judge who is also a Trump-appointed judge, also a Federalist Society judge, somebody that was handpicked and selected by the Federalist Society and by Donors Trust, and the money, was pouring. And, now we have like dollar amounts. The Coke industries. Okay, I got dollar amounts for them. All you got to do is follow the money. And this is the point of this story, is it's a path that we can follow now that has a name, that has dollar amounts, that has a law that's been broken. Okay, well, the Koch brothers, 2021, 27 different organizations controlled by Charles Koch, and Koch Industries, okay, they spent a total of, and this is 2021, this is post-2020 election, they spent $656.8 million on political candidates. $656.8 million, and I can tell you right now that 93% of that amount was spent on politics. Only 6% of that total amount went to charity. Their philanthropic efforts, only 6%. So that is a $524.9 million spend. And the year before, it was similar. It was also in the $500 million range. So you're talking $500 million. And $639.4 million in 2020. In 2021, $656.8 million. Okay, these are the small number of names who have the ability to write $18 million checks and would want to. And why would they need the Supreme Court? Why would they need it? And everybody's, holding their breath. All the women and all the men who love these women are all holding our breath today, hoping to God that the Supreme Court says something about this Federalist Society judge in Amarillo who, in spite of states' rights, made law for the entirety of the United States of America, made law that attacks the authority of the Food and Drug Administration. The federal government is literally taking away the standing and the scientific prowess of the Food and Drug Administration and taking away a woman's right to an early medical abortion. And everybody's looking at the Supremes.
Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed. Boy, Republicans are really out front about who they are now. I mean, just no dog whistles, just pure racism, pure anti-democracy, basically. Don't you think?
It's naked, unapologetic racism. It's American apartheid. That's what it is, and we've lived with it for so long. Boy, what a miscalculation. This is going to galvanize people, black, white, young, old. And this is, I think, more evidence of the Republican Party circling the drain.
Well, they say 2022, despite what the media told us, it was a pro-democracy vote. I mean, people do actually care about democracy. They care about, their right to choose. They care about gun violence. I mean, I just was looking while, obviously we're all focused on Trump and yada, yada. Mm-hmm. Idaho law criminalizes helping someone leave the state for an abortion. I mean, it is truly...
Is that constitutional?
...chilling what they're trying to do on the state level. Idaho has become the first state to pass a law explicitly restricting some out-of-state travel for abortions. Oh, my God. The new legislation makes helping a pregnant minor get an abortion, whether through medication or a procedure in another state, punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison. If the governor, who's a Republican, signs the bill, it goes into effect after 30 days. I mean, this is... Anyway, your thoughts on that first of all.
Yeah, restriction on interstate travel is usually something that is pretty easy to strike down. But when you have 5 justices up there who are willing to make their decisions based on their religion or their ideology or both, it's hard to answer the question, is this constitutional? It is if 5 justices at a minimum say it is. And listen, they revoked women's constitutional privacy rights. So, what's next?
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
Referring to Trump, Carlson says, I hate him passionately.
I hate him passionately.
We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights.
So there it is, Donald. The truth. All your friends at Fox hated you from the start and hate you even more now. Rupert cut you off. He picked Tiny D DeSantis. Sean and Laura won't have you on. Even Tucker admitted it. He hates you. Passionately. You could handle that, but Fox wants to make you disappear, switch off the spotlight. Tucker couldn't wait to ignore you most nights. And Rupert, he promised to make you disappear after all the money you made him. And as the walls are closing in on you, they've hung you out to dry. So what are you going to do, Donald? For once, we'll help you. You may not like us.
The Losers Project.
But we always tell the truth. Fox deserves to be punished. You're strongest on Twitter. Go back there. Tell your people to drop Fox. It's the only way, Donald. The only way.
My city's daily newspaper has gotten so emaciated it should be in hospice care. Its front section is down to 6 pages, half of which are cheap ads, and nearly all of its articles are out-of-date cut-and-paste pieces bought from out-of-state content providers. This embarrassment, put out by the Gannett chain of over 1,100 cadaverous papers, pretends to be the news source for Austin, a vibrant city of 1 million people and the capital of the second-largest state in America. Gannett, owned by a multi-billion-dollar Japanese hedge fund, profits by buying up local papers, firing most of the news staff, raising prices, selling off the paper's assets, then killing the paper. If your town's publication is now a Gannett property, look to Salinas, California for its future. The 152-year-old Salinas, Californian.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Justice Alito spent over 98 pages trying and failing to justify overturning the decision protecting these rights. Overturning a decision he told the United States Senate was an important precedent of the Supreme Court. His opinion isn't persuasive to me at all. It reads as snide and cruel. But that's not going to stop these justices from trying to throw us back into an age where women aren't free, to make their own choices about their own bodies and their own futures. It looks like the fix went in on that a while ago, and we just weren't told about it in the hearings. So tomorrow, the majority leader will bring before this chamber legislation to protect those rights nationwide, to protect that freedom across this country. And I'm eager to vote for it. We've got to stand against this assault on women's constitutional rights, and I hope some Republican colleagues will join us. And particularly, I hope, in the weeks and months ahead, that we can find ways to unravel the dark money scheme that has brought this court and our country closer to the brink. Because the court that dark money built, it's not done. It's not done trying to reshape America against our will to suit the extreme ideology of the right-wing billionaires behind the scheme. There is one good thing in all this darkness, and that is that the American people see this nonsense and have had enough.
Like I said, in heaven, we will be together, me and Sheldon Whitehouse. Honestly, these clips are old. These clips are more than almost 3 years old at this point, okay? And this was all known, but what we wouldn't know until now is just how far they wanted to go, just how far back in time the Federalist Society, the conservative billionaires, wanted to take this country. The rights that we've won over the last 6 decades of hard work and dedication to the principle that all of us are created equal, that there is equal justice under law, or there will be equal justice under law, because the arc of justice, the arc of law bends towards justice, and that if we just kept at it, and we just kept at it, and we just kept at it, we could have a real shining city on the hill of human rights. We could actually say that we did it. And these organizations, and these billionaires in particular, have no interest in that. They have an interest in us being barefoot and pregnant and wanting and fearful and not guaranteed the right to send our kids to school without fear. To fear harm will come to us every corner we turn, every store we go into, every place that we park our car. Okay? They want us to be fearful. They want us to be inundated with responsibilities that we can't meet, so that we're stressed all the time. And hey, if you start self-medicating, even better, even better, even better, because they want to run it all. And government has been an impediment, as it should be. Government is the guarantor of democracy, right? And they don't like it. They don't like it one damn bit. And you can just look at everything that we've seen in the last, week or two. The expulsion of the 2 Tennessee Democrats, the 2 black Tennessee Democrats, and the non-expulsion of the 1 white Tennessee Democrat was more than a dog whistle. It was the bullhorn that they accused the 2 Democrats of using to signal that they will reverse everything back to Jim Crow era times, that they were willing to do that. They were willing to go there, thus striking fear into the heart of every decent Tennessean, every decent American in this country, because it was a twofer, that signal. That signal was telling you 2 things. It was telling you Jim Crow is back, and that if we don't like your choice, we don't like who you elected, then we will simply nullify the results of the election. We will just go back and remove those people, because we now have a supermajority thanks to all this dark money, right? And so we will undo 2 elections just to show you that we will do it and we can do it and who we will be targeting, okay? Then in Texas, you have Abbott, the governor of Texas, saying 2 things, also 2 things. One thing is that he's saying the prosecutor who prosecuted the guy who killed the Black Lives Matter protester, okay, who killed him, who got in his car after posting on social media that he just might kill some people today on his way to work, and actually does do it. The guy that he drove his car into was also armed, because, hey, it's Texas. Well, Abbott didn't like the result of that gunfight. He wasn't happy with the result of it. Well, a jury said the guy who chose to drive his car into the crowd in the first place provoked this violence, and he was responsible for making the other guy stand his ground. And they found that the guy who drove his car into the Black Lives Matter protesters, and everybody in this scenario is white, just so you know. But because Abbott didn't like the fact that the Black Lives protester was the one who ended up dead, and the one who attacked the Black Lives Matter protester was the one that ended up in jail, being convicted by a jury of his peers for murder, Abbott did two things. He said, I'm going to nullify that jury. Just like they said in Tennessee, I'm going to nullify the election. He said, I'm going to nullify that jury. I'm going to pardon this guy before they even sentence him, okay? Because I want to signal to you that if you murder people that I like, I will pardon you. So murder in Texas is now okay as long as you murder a guy that the governor of Texas likes. And if they should find you guilty, he'll nullify the jury's verdict for you. He will. So we had that. Now we have an attack on the Food and Drug Administration, a federal agency that is science-y and medicine-y and actually looks out for the safety and efficacy of various drugs that it actually... This goes back to the COVID era. Believe me, it does. Okay, this is the anti-vax movement on steroids, and the Republicans are exploiting it, and it also does two things. Not only does it say that a federal agency is going to be defanged and questioned and called into question, and that if they approve drugs that we don't like, or they approve drugs that do things that we think prolong the wrong lives, we'll nullify that approval too, and we'll punish women first. We'll punish women first. So everybody's looking at a bought and paid for tainted Supreme Court to fix this. And it's a joke, and now you understand why they wanted the Supreme Court so damn bad. And this is just what happened in this week, okay? If you want to go back to like everything that happened in the last couple months, well, then you have to realize they're banning books. They're shutting down libraries. They're telling people what they can read. They're telling people what they can learn. You will not teach the racial history of the United States of America anywhere. You will not do it. And if you do it, we will take over your college. We will literally fire every person that's on the school board, and we will appoint people to be on the school board. You know, another story that went under the radar is the one about Mississippi and Jackson, Mississippi, who just got done with a water crisis, okay, tainted water there. And the Mississippi State Legislature, also supermajority, just decided that policing in Jackson should be done by the feds, not the feds, but by the state, not local police officers, but by the state.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Hey, so, you know, I was telling you I was doing some tech stuff, and and it's worth it. I mean, it blew my mind. I could barely concentrate on my real life, but all for you. Yes, for you. So what we did was we started a randirhodes.substack.com website, and it's awesome. It's a publishing website. And so what we can publish there is everything. Can publish the video podcasts, can publish the audio podcasts, and the homework is there for free. There's lots of free stuff there. There's, the little Randy in a Minutes. Those are all free. And now they're shareable. You just click on a share button and you can share them to whatever platforms you like. But everything will come right to your email, right into your inbox. So it's awesome. And I love it. I really do. So visit us at randirhodes.substack.com. Sign up for free. Get all the free stuff. And then if you really like it, love it, need it, have to have it, then go ahead and buy a stinking podcast subscription. And you'll get both. You'll get the video and the audio. You just put buds in your ear, walk around with your phone and listen. Or watch it on a big screen. Whatever you like to do, you can do when you buy a stinking podcast. Now, if you already have a podcast that you bought from RandiRhodes.com, it's the same product, just a different delivery method. So think of it this way. So you got the same products, but now they're in different stores. So it's all cool. It's all okay. If you have a subscription, you will get everything that you signed up to get. If you visit us at Substack, you'll get everything that we give in a subscription, video, audio, etc., but right to your inbox. So you choose how you want it, when you want it, where you want it, and we'll get it to you. And thank you so much for supporting our show the way that you do. It's amazing, and it allows us to innovate and do new stuff. So thank you. Thank you very much, and visit us at randyrhodes.substack.com.
When Vladimir Putin invaded a peaceful Ukraine, his brutal shock troops committed hideous war crimes against women, children, and the elderly. He bombed cities, towns, and villages. America and the world gave Ukraine weapons, supplies, and intelligence. The Ukrainians put their courageous soldiers in the line of fire. With great sacrifice, this alliance broke the invasion, pushed it back, liberated millions. Victory for Ukraine is still in sight, but the war isn't over, and the new front is in Washington, where MAGA Republicans want a Putin victory. They promise to cut off aid to Ukraine if their side wins. You heard that right. They want to help Putin win, threatening the United States with nuclear annihilation. It's sick, it's wrong, it's MAGA. If their side wins in 2024, Putin wins, and the blood will be on our hands.
Rupert Murdoch thinks Fox viewers are stupid. He told us Fox stood with Trump, stood with America, that Fox was the MAGA network. But behind their backs, he was laughing. Rupert admits he knew from the start that the stolen election lie was a joke, a con, a fraud he pulled on Donald Trump, the MAGA base, and the Fox audience. The people he made into MAGA heroes, off the air, they called them liars, kooks and crazies. Fox knew they were lying, but made millions tricking their viewers. Rupert knew the election wasn't stolen and told you it was. Sean and Tucker and Laura knew. Everyone at Fox knew. They lied and kept lying, even when it led to violence and death. That's Fox News, and that's the truth.
Glad to have a MAGA-packed Supreme Court? Proud that they lied under oath to get the job? If so, thank a MAGA Republican. If you enjoy seeing our rights disappear one by one, thank a MAGA Republican today. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1873. That was the day the single most deadly incident of the Reconstruction era occurred, known as the Colfax Massacre. As many as 150 black Republicans in Colfax, Louisiana, were slaughtered by white supremacists determined to destroy advances made by the formerly enslaved. Results of the 1872 gubernatorial election.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Is this corruption? Is this criminal? Explain it.
Well, it's for sure corruption, as the founding fathers would have defined that term. I first noticed it when I was looking at why Republicans at all evaporated on climate change. When I got to the Senate, there were Republicans working on climate change. As soon as Citizens United was decided, as soon as the dark money flowed in huge denominations after that decision, they all stopped. You couldn't get a Republican near a climate bill. And so I began to look at that apparatus that was pushing climate denial, that dark money apparatus. And then I began to see that it's a lot of the same groups that are backing the Republicans, just like we described in the $1 billion in this election for Republican Senate candidates. And then as I looked at the Supreme Court, I began to see the same groups showing up there in the effort to pack the court, in the effort to make sure that Garland did not get on the court and that Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett did get on the court. And all of the machinations that we had to live through in the Senate as they rammed those judges through against all sorts of Senate precedents and traditions and rules. So this book is about the way that the dark money effort, that apparatus, over time and with over $500 million, actually has packed the Supreme Court captured it the way the old railroad barons would have captured a 19th century railroad commission.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. They want to go back to the 19th century. That's why when you see these Supreme Court decisions, they go back to 1839, or they go back to one of them, the Roe v. Wade. Where did Roe v. Wade, not Roe v. Wade, where did the Dobbs decision actually originate? It originated in Mississippi. This is where dark money actually goes in order to bring cases that will go all the way up through the Supreme Court so that they can have their way with you. Right. And it's all about that. That's what the money wants. The money wants to turn back the clock. The money wants to go back to the days of the robber barons. The money wants to go back to the days where people, owned people, where people were not free, where people weren't able to make choices, where people weren't able to move freely about the country, where people weren't able to read. People didn't. And if they did read, the newspapers were completely owned. You had the William Randolph Hearst. They made movies about these guys. And what's interesting about Citizen Kane, the story of William Randolph Hearst and how just completely insane he was, is he also collected. But he didn't collect things because he loved the things. He collected things because that's what you did, right? And it drove him crazy that he couldn't appreciate the art that he was collecting. It's just such a repetitive story. And every time we make progress, they want to go back, but this time they're going extreme. This time they're going way the F back. They want to go back a century, okay? They want to be the landowners, hence the real estate magnates, the railroads. We all know what goes on. We're sitting here watching the railroads go, have derailments like every single day. Who knew? Until East Palestine, Ohio, actually was put out of their own houses, and they said something about it. Then all of a sudden, everybody started realizing, oh my God, these trains go off the rails all the time. You really only have one crew member, or sometimes two, on a train that's 2 or 3 miles long? Really? Yeah, really. And they're carrying hazardous materials? Yes. Well, why don't we, make rules at least for the hazardous materials? Well, we tried, but they were undone. And they said, well, if the whole train isn't hazardous material and it's just like 10 or 15 cars, you don't have to apply the hazardous materials rules to that particular train. You know what I'm saying? And this is what the billionaires want, this precision railroading, to make it efficient and cost cut and not have real human beings on board to steer the train away from trouble, right? And so you have the media owned by, Rupert Murdoch, and you have the NRA trying to put guns in everybody's hands so we could just kill each other and get it over with. And you have polluters, the oil and gas industry, the Koch brothers, just wanting to dump in your... And God help you if, your water gets tainted, right? They're not coming to get you anymore. They're just not into it. They're not that into you. That's what the money wants, and that's what the money is for, and that's what they're doing. And so if they don't like, at long last, the choice that you made for your state legislature especially, which is where all this real evil stuff is going on. Look, Florida, last night at 11 o'clock at night, Ron death sentence here. He's not even here, okay? We just had a 1 in 1,000 year storm. You want to see? Listen, I'm going to show you something. This is, there's no audio. Look at this. Put this up, Brett. This is drone footage. This is Fort Lauderdale. This is literally Broward. This is Broward County. Look at it. Well, where's Ron death sentence? He's in Ohio, not campaigning for president. Right. Yeah, he's in Ohio campaigning for something that he won't tell us what it is. But he managed to get a bill sent to him last night at 11 o'clock at night, and he signed it. And that is an abortion ban. That is a 6-week abortion ban, okay? And in Florida, this was the last place that women in the Deep South, that women in the Southeast of this country could go to get help if they ended up pregnant and didn't want to be. This was the last bastion of hope. Florida was. And he passed a 15-week abortion ban that's still being litigated. It's still in the court. And before that even gets settled, before that even gets litigated, he passed another one. Just throw crap at the fan. Just keep on going. It's chaos. Because in chaos, they can steal. And they could steal everything. So last night at 11 o'clock at night, without any ado, without any fanfare, without anybody really knowing it, he signed a 6-week abortion ban. Can't go into place like right now because the other one isn't done being litigated. I mean, this is just such an affront and an assault on every single human being in this country. It's just, and it's endless. They're on an extremist roll, and buckle up, everybody, buckle up. Now, the only thing that's good about knowing that Clarence Thomas broke the law is that there is one law, finally, that we've identified that he could be prosecuted for. And yes, the Attorney General of the United States has the authority to do it, right?
The Attorney General has the authority to investigate for willful violations of the disclosure requirement and for merely negligent violations of the disclosure requirement. The civil fine is less, but the fact of the investigation is the same. And what's important here is that this court simply refuses to subject itself to any factual inquiry or investigation. And so to have the Attorney General come in and do a report that sets the facts out so that he can pursue a civil fine is very important. Setting aside the fine, it's not a big number, but the fact of an investigation is really important and potentially a spur to Chief Justice Roberts to do what he should have done all along, which is to provide a mechanism for investigating allegations about Supreme Court justices.
Well, it seems like Roberts, you would think he would be ashamed or embarrassed about the extremism that's on his court and how it's all falling apart on his court. But you know what? He's been waiting. He's been hibernating on that court, waiting for the money to send him compadres, waiting for the money to send him cooperators, waiting for the money to send him crooked, dirty judges to bring the swamp to the Supreme Court. And that has happened. And the only thing that can be done about it is the prosecution of the disclosure law, the one law that applies to the Supreme Court justices, because they don't even have an ethics law. They don't have to recuse themselves. They don't have to declare themselves conflicted out of a case. It's the right thing to do, but there's no law. There's no law. There's one law, has to do with real estate, and Clarence Thomas broke it. And that's all we got going for us with regard to the Supreme Court. But I hope you understand why they needed and wanted the Supreme Court and why Roberts has absolutely no embarrassment or shame about the direction this court is going in, which is to give the money everything the money wants. It's because he's been sitting there waiting for this, waiting for them to send him enough people to make a majority. And so we have got to do something about either increasing the number of seats on the court or at least removing one of the dirtiest justices that we've ever seen in the history of the court. In the 234 years of the Supreme Court, no one has ever seen anything like Clarence Thomas.
In the 234-year history of the United States Supreme Court, no member of the United States Supreme Court has ever appeared clearly to break the law.
Right. Never seen it before. Never. But we now have statements from Harlan Crow admitting that he did do these things, that he did buy this house. And it doesn't really matter why. Now, you're going to hear, he's going to tell you, because he, if you read around about it or if you listen to reporting, then Harlan Crow's going to say, oh, well, I wanted to build a museum to honor the second black Supreme Court justice. What about the third one? Are we going to honor the third one? No. Okay, the second one, though, we must. Did we do the first one? No. But the second one we must, right? It doesn't matter why he bought Clarence Thomas's mom's house and became and is Clarence Thomas's mother's landlord. It doesn't matter why. That's not a factor. What matters is Clarence never told you about it. Why would he hide that?
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazzar. This time on Code WACK, how does diversity in politics affect the policies that impact our everyday lives? What challenges do women face when running for office? And once they get there, how do their life experiences influence their political work? To find out, we spoke to California Assemblywoman Pilar Schiavo.
It really is so important to have diversity in your legislature and any decision-making body, right? And you see that in our Women's Caucus, where, we're really prioritizing women and children. Childcare and affordable childcare is a huge priority for us as a caucus. I can't imagine any other caucus or group of folks in Sacramento really prioritizing that if it's not women. And just things like that. The Women's Caucus is the one who's, sponsoring these 17 bills around reproductive rights and justice and healthcare. Women who have these kinds of frontline experiences know what it's like to experience pay inequity or harassment in the workplace or sexual violence, attacks on bodily autonomy. Having those firsthand experiences and then going to Sacramento and having an opportunity to make policy and shape policy to address those issues, I think is critical, and it's really exciting.
Get the full Code WAC story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Today's actions will accelerate our ongoing transition to a clean vehicles future.
Biden EPA kicks off next phase of electric vehicle revolution. Crunch time and contentious negotiations over water cuts from the declining Colorado River. Plus,
the smoke is definitely toxic.
Massive plastics fire in Indiana expected to burn for days.
Is that Indiana State Fire Chief Steve Jones?
Yes, it is.
Indiana's Jones?
Yes.
All of those good stories and bad jokes straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Toyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
A new study shows that climate change is leading to more major league home runs, attributing at least 500 additional homers from 2010 to 2019 to Earth's human-made warming. And I'm being told the New York Yankees have offered carbon dioxide a $400 million contract.
Seems only fair. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I'd like to apologize for my behavior so far. What do you have for us in today's Green News Report?
Well, first, another chemical disaster, this time in eastern Indiana. More than 2,000 residents of the town of Richmond remain evacuated after a massive fire at a plastics recycling facility ignited on Tuesday. The cause is under investigation. All employees are accounted for. Fire officials say the massive plume of toxic smoke from the fire is, quote, definitely toxic, and warned those downwind to shelter in place or leave the area. The fire is expected to burn for several more days.
So this fire comes on the same day or the day after the Biden administration's EPA was trying to curb pollution from plastics factories?
Yes, ironic, isn't it?
It sure is.
The fire highlights the never-ending toxicity of plastics and the fossil fuels they're made from. And now a landmark new study finds that plastics are responsible for a wide range of health impacts, including cancers and birth defects. The first-of-its-kind analysis examined the entire plastics life cycle, from extraction of the oil for manufacturing to dumping in landfills and oceans. The analysis found harms primarily to workers at plastics manufacturing and recycling plants and to residents near those facilities, linked to higher rates of cardiovascular disease, toxic metal poisoning, birth defects, and lung cancer.
Not good.
The researchers say the widespread hazardous impacts are magnified by low rates of recycling and the persistence of plastic pollution in the environment. They recommend a global treaty to control the manufacture and use of plastics, which is now under development by the United Nations.
Good luck with that.
In the contentious negotiations over water allocations from the rapidly declining Colorado River, the Biden administration this week laid out stark choices facing 7 western states that rely on the river, which is in steep decline due to chronic overconsumption and historic megadrought. The draft proposal is focused on keeping 2 of the nation's largest reservoirs from reaching dead pool status, when levels are so low that water cannot flow past the dams. The proposals are pretty dire trade-offs. One path would cut by an equal percentage across the board for all users, potentially as much as 25%, which would hit California the hardest and trigger litigation. The other would preserve California's senior legal water rights and prioritize its farming regions that feed the nation, but would leave little for Arizona and Nevada.
I'm guessing California likes that second option better.
The states have until summer to reach an agreement, or the Interior Department will impose cuts. Finally, in a major announcement, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Michael Regan this week proposed strict new tailpipe pollution limits that would put the United States at the forefront of the global transition to electric vehicles.
That'd be nice.
If adopted, the new standards would begin in model year 2027 and would effectively require more than half of all new cars and light trucks sold in the United States to be electric by 2030. The draft rules do not mandate electric vehicles or ban gas-powered models, and instead leave it up to automakers to decide how best to reduce overall fleet pollution. If the rules are adopted as proposed, EPA scientists say it would cut car and truck pollution and carbon emissions in half within a decade. EPA estimates the benefits of the new standards would exceed costs, saving consumers on average $12,000 over the life of a vehicle and revitalize American manufacturing. Plus, cutting pollution and greenhouse gas emissions will deliver massive savings on public health and climate costs.
That's close to $2 trillion in net benefits and over 10 billion tons of CO2 emissions avoided. This is historic news.
It may be historic, but, I bet we could run the entire American car fleet on the anger of Fox News viewers after that story. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, Twitters, and Mastodons at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
In December of 2017, Leo was honored at a gathering of conservative activists at the Trump Hotel in Washington.
Leonard Leo has single-handedly changed the face of the judiciary under the auspices of Ed Meese and many of the people who started the Federalist Society. He has many hats. That isn't even all he does. He doesn't really tell all that he does, but I know enough to know the man is a force of nature.
The problem here is not Leonard Leo. He is not a king of Republican judicial appointments. He is a fixer. He is a factotum. The interests behind him, who are anonymous, but who are paying for this exercise, that's what we need to worry about.
Oh, man. I don't know why America doesn't pay attention to what's happening right in front of its face, or when decent people who are educated in the law and can see the money sloshing around and, have the information that we need in order to right this extremist thing that we're living through. Don't take it seriously. I'm not sure, why that is and how it's happening right in front of our faces. And, but I will tell you this. So now the Supreme Court has just weighed in on whether or not it's going to ban or allow this one judge in Texas, in Amarillo, Texas's order to ban mifepristone nationally to stand. And the Supreme Court said, well, Not today, we won't. Today, we're not going to ban it. But next Wednesday, we'll let you know. Next Wednesday. That was what they decided to do about today. They just said, well, we're not ready to write a really harmful opinion today, so we'll go craft it over the weekend. We'll let you know on Wednesday, just exactly how extreme we're going to get in the United States of America. I mean, honestly, I'm telling you right now, the idea of nullifying everything that you can see it. When you see 98% of America wants background checks, when you see that 79% of Republicans want to see mifepristone left alone, they want to see it on the market. When you see 80-something% of all Americans are like, leave abortion alone, just leave it where it is. Just you people have gone crazy, and we believe in freedom, and that's the way it is. And so if I'm against abortion, I won't have one. But women are literally dying now because they're being forced to carry babies that will never live outside the womb to term. They're forced to have breech births of encephalitic babies. They're forced to be septic. They're forced to, you're saying that if a woman has a miscarriage, she needs to be investigated. You're saying that you want vigilante justice in Texas. You want vigilante justice in Florida. You're saying that the governor can have his own police force. He could have his own militia in Florida. And you're saying that, Jackson, Mississippi we have to help these people. They can't self-govern, so we're going to have them policed by state police, because that's what's going on in Jackson. And also, listen, I got to tell you, the reason why Memphis sounded so familiar to people when they, completely negated the results of a free and fair election in Memphis, Tennessee, and the Republicans in the state legislature of Tennessee they expelled Justin Pearson. Justin Jones was from Nashville, and then Justin Pearson, he had to be reinstated by his city council as well. And Pearson is from Memphis. Well, why was Memphis top of mind? Because Tyree Nichols was beaten to death by police officers in Memphis. And what was going on in Memphis was the people of Memphis, not only did they vote for Justin Pearson to represent them, but they voted for an oversight board in Memphis of the police department. They wanted an independent oversight board to, monitor the policing that happens in their town, in their city, right? So they voted for an oversight board, and the state legislature, the same state legislature that removed Justin Pearson, prior to that, took away from the oversight board that the people voted to create their subpoena power. Literally took away their ability to subpoena witnesses when there were allegations of police brutality or over-policing or under-policing or whatever it was, right? So the state legislature inserted themselves into local elections there again and took away the subpoena power of the oversight board. Well, then they went even further, and they decided to take the oversight board that the voters of Memphis created and give it to the police department itself. So the police department is going to police itself yet again, which is exactly what the people of Memphis voted to change. And see, this is the kind of crap we're up against. And this stuff all flies under the radar until something so ugly happens that everyone can see it. And the thing about the Roe and the Dobbs and the mifepristone and the Justins, I love the chant. The chant became no Justins, no peace. It was just brilliant. But, when people have had enough, they tend to show up and say something. Look at France. Do you know why France is protesting? Do you have any idea why there are hundreds of thousands of people on the street in France? Because Macron decided that he was going to use his executive power and undo what the people voted for. He was going to raise the retirement age in France by himself 2 years. He was going to raise it from 62 to 64. And they went, no. And that's why they're out on the street. But where did they go? Where did they go for their protests? They went to the businesses. They went to the richest man in France, who happens to be one of the richest men in the world. Okay? They went to his house, the guy who owns Louis Vuitton and also Hennessy, the cognac company. They went to his house because they said the money's got to come from somewhere. It needs to come from you guys. We are so tired of paying into a system. And then when we get to the qualification age to reap the benefits of an insurance plan that we paid into. See, here in America, you guys, I pay, when I work for corporate, and every paycheck you get, there's taxes taken out, federal taxes. Those are the taxes for Medicare and Social Security, okay? And we end up paying about 8% of our income for that. Well, you got corporations that pay, some pay half of it, they pay their 6%, and others manage to pay absolutely nothing at all. Well, the people in France are smarter than we are. They went and protested at the home of the richest people in France.
Protesters out again this morning, targeting a visit by French President Macron to Notre Dame Cathedral. This after the 12th national strike in as many weeks, with hundreds of thousands taking to the streets. Riot police and protesters clashing here in Paris, dozens arrested. At one point, protesters storming the headquarters of Louis Vuitton. More than 100 people are injured, police using more than 1,000 canisters of tear gas, according to a civic group. In Rennes, in northwestern France, police using water cannon. Amid the chaos, a car set alight. And more protests expected in a matter of hours.
So that sign there, gendarme, casse toi. I speak terrible French, but what it means is police, we will break you. That's what it means. But they went to the home of the person who owns LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, okay, in their nationwide protest, because they're trying to say somebody's got to pay for this. And, we already paid, so now it's your turn. Pay, pony up, kick into the kitty. We're not going to let you raise the retirement age. And here in the United States, they raised the retirement age to like 66 and 6 months, and now 70 to get full benefit. And nobody even noticed. Nobody even paid any attention to it. Nobody even, said, oh, you did that? Oh, you're doing that? Oh. You know what? It took them, and not even taking away books, not even taking away history, No, it took them making you wear a mask for you to show up and scream and yell about the power of the state. And now they're taking away the rights of women and turning us back into a Jim Crow South. And people are starting to say, okay, I get it.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
My city's daily newspaper has gotten so emaciated it should be in hospice care. Its front section is down to 6 pages, half of which are cheap ads, and nearly all of its articles are out-of-date cut-and-paste pieces bought from out-of-state content providers. This embarrassment, put out by the Gannett chain of over 1,100 cadaverous papers, pretends to be the news source for Austin, a vibrant city of 1 million people and the capital of the second-largest state in America. Gannett, owned by a multi-billion-dollar Japanese hedge fund, profits by buying up local papers, firing most of the news staff, raising prices, selling off the paper's assets, then killing the paper. If your town's publication is now a Gannett property, look to Salinas, California for its future. The 152-year-old Salinas Californian was this important region's main news artery until its new hedge fund owners started hacking. The paper was down to 1 reporter last December, but that lone journalist quit, and the Californian is now a newspaper without reporters, meaning no coverage of elections, city hall, sports, police, workplace issues, etc. The Salinas paper is technically alive, overseen until recently by another Gannett paper located 300 miles away. Now, says the chain's comically named Center for Community Journalism, Salinas residents can get their news by reading Gannett's national paper, USA Today. This is Jim Hightower saying, actually, Gannett's bosses are making major investments in themselves. CEO Mike Reed's salary this year is $8 million, and the global chain's owners will spend $100 million for a stock buyback scheme that will artificially jack up their own wealth. This is a blockbuster story of real news affecting real people and democracy itself. So how many Gannett newspapers do you guess are covering it? Howdy-ho, folks, and thanks for tuning in to my Hightower Radio commentaries. And guess what? There's even more Hightower waiting for you online. Subscribers to my Substack newsletter, Jim Hightower's Lowdown, get commentaries, articles, interviews with progressive sparklies, live events, historical nuggets, and more. Go to jimhightower.substack.com to sign up, and you'll get more. That's jimhightower.substack.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1873. That was the day the single most deadly incident of the Reconstruction era occurred, known as the Colfax Massacre. As many as 150 black Republicans in Colfax, Louisiana, were slaughtered by white supremacists determined to destroy advances made by the formerly enslaved. Results of the 1872 gubernatorial election in Louisiana had been hotly contested. President Ulysses S. Grant ordered federal troops in to support the Republican winner, William Pitt Kellogg. A number of black radical Republicans had also won or retained local and state political positions. William Ward, a black Civil War veteran and militia leader, had won a seat in the state legislature. By the beginning of April, he and others were being threatened with attacks on the Grant Parish Courthouse in Colfax and lynchings by defeated white Southern Democrats. Desperate for backup, Ward and others left for New Orleans to appeal for federal reinforcement. On the holy Easter Sunday, ex-Confederates, Klansmen, and Democrats rode into Colfax armed with guns, rifles, knives, and a cannon. 150 black Republicans were ready to defend their courthouse. Fighting raged on for hours, but eventually black Republicans were forced to retreat and then were massacred. 97 whites were indicted on federal conspiracy charges under the 1870
I watched it on TV.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Overnight, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signing a bill that would ban most abortions after 6 weeks.
What?
DeSantis quietly signing the law just after 11 p.m., posting only this photo on Twitter. A stark contrast to how he publicly celebrated a 15-week ban last spring.
We are here today to defend those who can't defend themselves.
Unless blocked in the court, the move will shut off access in a state that saw a 60% increase in women seeking abortion since Roe was overturned.
Oh, my God.
Known as the Heartbeat Protection Act, it does make an exception for abortions up to 15 weeks in cases of rape, incest, or human trafficking.
Have all members voted?
Anger erupting in the Florida House during debate over the bill. Protests and chaos before the Republican-dominated legislature passed it.
This is all just circus politics meant to divide us.
Democrats and critics slamming the law as extreme, with the White House saying it is out of step with the views of the vast majority of the people of Florida and of all the United States.
That's true. Like over 70% of all Floridians, all of us, are against this. All of it. And so why isn't it happening? Why isn't it happening? Because they have 70 members of the Republican persuasion and 40 members of the Democratic persuasion. This is minority-majority rule. They gerrymandered themselves into these seats, and now they're going to have circus. That's what the woman in the gallery was yelling. This is circus politics meant to divide us. Oh, no truer words were ever spoken about this. 6 weeks. You don't even know you don't even know. You're like late for your period at 6 weeks. You don't know you're pregnant at 6 weeks. I don't even think half these pregnancy tests, well, maybe now they do. Back in my day when you had to pee on the stick, I don't think it would even, find, that you were pregnant until, it was like a good 2 months. A good 2 months. I mean, this is, but, you could go to 15 weeks because if you're raped, or if you're the victim of incest, you might have to go to court, and prove it somehow. Just remember during your rape, collect some DNA, and then hope that the police, whatever, whoever they answer to, if it's, DeSantis's militia, I doubt they'll do the work. But hope that the police can find the assailant to get a DNA sample from the assailant, like sooner than 20 years down the road, like E. Jean Carroll. You know what I'm saying? This is just bizarro world. And there was a 60% increase in travel to Florida for the purpose of abortion after the entire Southeast said, no abortion for you, women. this is so against the will of the people. This is so against popular opinion. This is so against what America wants to focus on. Remember, they were running in 2022. And remember, they told us they were there to fight crime. That's what they were there for. They're all about fighting crime and lowering the cost of living, right? The inflation. Well, I have news for you. The inflation is being tamed very well. We're not in a recession. I mean, it worked out really, really good. All it took was a couple of banks to go belly up, apparently, and send the fear of God into people, who have money, like big money, like the billionaires, to cut the crap. And all of a sudden they say, okay, we'll stop gouging. We'll stop gouging. We'll stop. We get it. We got the message. But anything that they don't like, anything at all that they don't like, they don't care. They don't care what the, and here's the thing, like I went through this whole long list about, expelling people that were duly elected, undoing 2 elections, and then Abbott doing his jury nullification, right? Because he didn't like the one that prevailed in the gunfight. He liked the one that started the gunfight. And that guy who started the gunfight was found guilty of murder. Now, the trans bills, like all of a sudden we have to do something about people that exist on this planet since the beginning of time who absolutely do nothing to take your money or hurt your life or, do anything at all that would, stifle your ability to earn a living or educate yourself or do anything, but, they're the problem, right? And we have to legislate against them and ban books. Let's ban them. And undo gun laws. And we have to undo gun laws in places where the locals have voted to have gun laws, like New York. That Bruin decision, that was a beauty. That was also the Supreme Court. See, we don't give a damn that New York doesn't like guns. We want everyone armed, everyone. And we're doing it at the behest of the gun manufacturers. And there's nobody that could stop us because we own the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court said, we don't care about local. We don't care what the city wants. We don't care what the state wants. We care what the manufacturers want. We care what the NRA wants. And by the way, even after all of this bloodshed, after all of these children, dead children, 3 of them, which is what led to the Tennessee legislators standing up in the first place to try and effect a little bit of change, like background checks. In the end, they want an assault weapons ban, which most of us do too. But that's why they were expelled, right? Because they dared to say, hey, enough already. We got dead children again and again and again everywhere now. You think it can't happen here, then it happens here. You think it can't happen there, then it happens there. Over here, over there, over this place, that place, north, south, east, west, dead children everywhere. Somebody's got to step. Well, we're going to expel you. And we're going to, nullify juries that found for the wrong gunman. Found for the dead gunman. No. We want the live gunman to be spared. We don't like that jury. So we're going to nullify that, right? And by the way, this goes right back to the, hey, let's fire the prosecutors, right? That happened in Florida too. I think his name is Warren. His last name is Warren. Prosecutor in Tampa. He said, I'm not going to prosecute women for having an abortion. I'm not doing that. And Ron DeSantis fired him. He was duly elected and he fired the prosecutor. So now if they can't fire the prosecutor in time, then they'll nullify the jury. They'll just step in and say, well, the jury was wrong. The jury chose wrong. We don't agree with the jury. I'm the governor. I'm going to nullify the jury. I mean, this is not a system in which free people can operate. This is just not a system that is, self-policing or sustainable. And that's why they don't want us to be self-policed, okay? They want militias. And they want their own militia that's answerable to them, like DeSantis has a militia now. We haven't had a militia in this country since World War II, okay? But now he wants his own personal militia to answer to him. Because if the policing happens and the policing goes well, then the wrong person will end up on trial according to him or according to Abbott, and we're going to have to go in and nullify the jury. And so why don't we just take the policing into our own hands, a la Mississippi? This is what they did in Mississippi. They said, okay, we're going to remove the police from Jackson, Mississippi, and we're going to put in state capitol cops because we don't like the way you're policing yourself. Same thing happened in Memphis. Oh, you want an independent, board to oversee the police because Tyree Nichols was beaten erroneously to death by police who got it completely wrong? Okay, well, we don't want that. So we're going to, take away their subpoena power of this independent board you voted for. Oh, and then we're going to move it back into the police. Yeah, we're going to stick it in something. We'll call it internal affairs because people are comfortable with that. But it's going to be the police board that the people of Memphis voted to have as an oversight. And we'll put it back in the police. Jackson, Mississippi, 80% black. They went in there and they picked themselves, I swear to God, the supermajority in the state house in Mississippi decided an all-white court. An all-white court is what Jackson, Mississippi needs. And that's what they got.
Clear for takeoff. The Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed. You just said the Texas judge's ruling in the mifepristone case should be gut-level frightening. If it stands, it means a court can get rid of any approved drug if it offends their religion. Think of the crazy S some faiths preach. It goes way beyond abortion and birth control. That's exactly what I was thinking, and you said it on Twitter. You said, my invisible sky wizard doesn't think you should take medication for depression. Buy Zoloft. I believe suffering is a gift from God. Buy pain meds, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here. It's true. It's suddenly, after 20 years, not up to the FDA anymore what drugs are approved.
It completely undermines the foundation of science and frankly, capitalism.
What you're seeing happening in Tennessee is something that is both inspirational. I mean, you just said, what is the hardest ball that been played in Tennessee legally? Send in the feds and crawl up their a-holes over civil rights violations. I mean, we really are at a point where this is just completely anti-democratic. Them saying, we're just not going to seat you. We don't care what the people voted for.
And you know, was it within their legal rights to do it? I don't know. Well, you know what? Based on you know on the rules of the legislature, I suppose. But there are all kinds of other issues behind it: issues of fairness, issues of racism, civil rights issues. But here's the thing: Democrats respond to things like this by saying, well, you know, we really need to follow the rules. We really need to follow the laws. We really, and nobody's saying do anything illegal. But like with the mifepristone decision, like just say, no, screw you. The FDA trumps you. You know what? The FDA, the safety of people and the safety of their lives trumps your stupid decision. And we're going to go with the judge in Washington State.
Yeah. Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
There are some who want to divide us, to make a political point or turn a profit. Joe Biden just wants to get things done. In just 2 years, Joe Biden's done a lot. Biden brought both parties together to rebuild our roads and bridges and pass laws that lower the cost of prescription drugs, deliver clean drinking water, and bring manufacturing jobs back to America. President Biden knows we can get more done if we come together, because Joe Biden's a president for all Americans.
My city's daily newspaper has gotten so emaciated it should be in hospice care. Its front section is down to 6 pages, half of which are cheap ads, and nearly all of its articles are out-of-date cut-and-paste pieces bought from out-of-state content providers. This embarrassment, put out by the Gannett chain of over 1,100 cadaverous papers, pretends to be the news source for Austin, a vibrant city of 1 million people and the capital of the second-largest state in America. Gannett, owned by a multi-billion-dollar Japanese hedge fund, profits by buying up local papers, firing most of the news staff, raising prices, selling off the paper's assets, then killing the paper. If your town's publication is now a Gannett property, look to Salinas, California for its future. The 152-year-old Salinas Californian was this important region's main news artery until its new hedge fund owners started hacking. The paper was down to 1 reporter last December, but that lone journalist quit, and the Californian is now a newspaper without reporters, meaning no coverage of elections, city hall, sports, police, workplace issues, etc. The Salinas paper is technically alive, overseen until recently by another Gannett paper located 300 miles away.
Don't give up
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
You know, with all the dead people, especially the children, you would think that the NRA would give it a rest. Oh, no. Oh, hell no. They're having their convention today. And Mr. Mike Pence, the most pious man in the room, decided to show up and say this.
In the wake of tragic violence that struck here in the heartland in recent days, at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, and at a bank branch in Louisville, Kentucky. The Bible says that we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And I know I speak with everyone here when I say that our hearts and our prayers are with all the families that suffered loss and injury in these unspeakable attacks. Ignoring the motivations of the trans activists who killed 3 children and 3 adults at that Christian school in Nashville, and ignoring the mental health challenges of the man who killed 5 people and injured 8 others in Louisville, President Biden and the Democrats have returned to the same tired arguments about gun control and gun confiscation. But we don't need gun control. We need crime control. We don't need lectures about the liberties of law-abiding citizens. We need solutions to protect our kids.
He went on to say that because the mental health problem is so outrageous, that we needed more guns, not less guns. So is he saying that we should shoot the mentally ill? I'm not clear.
And when did anybody talk about confiscation?
No, never.
Ever. Once.
No, never, ever. They were talking about, banning future assault weapon ownership or background checks for, red flag laws for people who were, deemed like the red flag law in Louisville would have actually stopped that shooter. His mother is on a 911 call saying, my son has a gun and he's not okay. Okay. He's under mental health care. He's getting care. It would have stopped him from being able to buy a gun if his parents felt like there was a place where they could go and say, don't ever sell a gun to my son because, he's mentally challenged right now. He's going through some things. But there is no red flag law. And that's what they were asking for. They were asking for a red flag law. They were asking for background checks, gun storage rules, some safety rules, for the kids that take the guns from their parents, this kind of thing. No. They always have to go there. They always have to go to, they're wrong, we're right. Even though their version of being right is dead people and dead children, and they think that that's the price you pay for freedom. We're not free. We're not free. And the amount of freedom that we can expect in the future, should they have their way, is like none. None. You won't be able to read what you want. You won't be, this Moore v. Harper, this Supreme Court case, the independent legislature theory. You understand what that is, right? That means that the legislature, the supermajorities in places like Mississippi, in places like Florida, in places like Tennessee, etc., right? They can undo the results of a free and fair election. And this is why I'm showing you that they're undoing jury verdicts. They're undoing, elections already. They don't like the choice that you made. They don't like the fact that your state legislator is going to stand up and say we need red flag laws, or stand up and say enough dead kids, or stand up and say, racism is a thing. You disagree with them. So therefore you get to remove them. You get to expel them. You get to undo the results of a free and fair election. And they're firing prosecutors that say we're not going to prosecute women for, exercising a right that they have to privacy in their medical decisions. You don't want politics in the doctor's office. Okay, you just don't. Well, we'll just expel them. And now, we'll fire the prosecutors, or we'll nullify the verdict of the jury, or whenever you vote for an oversight board to have oversight over, schools, or have oversight over the policing, and we'll just disband it. We'll just, insert ourselves in with our supermajority, and we'll just get rid of whatever you voted for. Pretty soon, your legislature will overturn the results of the election. That's the next big change that the Supreme Court is going to preside over. Now, the idea that, we had this judge in Amarillo that went there, and now we have to wait till Wednesday to find out if, as women people, we're free to see what Alito and Roberts and Clarence and Amy and Kavanaugh think about, these people who cheated and lied to get their positions are now going to be the arbiter of what is free and what is just. We know they lied. We saw them lie. Gorsuch totally cheated. That seat did not belong to him. It belonged to. It didn't belong to Trump to give. It belonged to Barack Obama to give, to nominate, and for the Senate to confirm. But, Mitch McConnell said, no. I don't like that. I'm going to nullify that. I'm just going to say no. And filibuster the hell out of it. You know why we don't have a law that codifies Roe v. Wade? Do you know what happened with that? I meant to tell you when I played that other clip of my boyfriend in heaven, of Sheldon Whitehouse, telling you on, I guess, the 11th of May, that they were going to, in 2022, that they were going to vote to codify Roe v. Wade after the Supreme Court's, fix was in. The reason why that never happened is because they filibustered it. The Senate literally, there was a vote. It was 49-51 against protecting the right of women in this country. So why 51? Why 51, Randy? Joe Manchin. That's why. Yeah. They literally filibustered the bill that would have protected our rights. I mean, they're showing you everything. Everything. There's nothing that happened in the past 2 weeks that doesn't show you that they don't like you. They don't trust you. They don't like you. They don't want you voting. They don't want your opinion. Don't poll people. Don't ask them if they're for this or that, because it doesn't matter what they say. They say that they're for sensible gun regulations. We don't care. They say they're for, an oversight board for the policing in their neighborhood. We don't care. They say that they're for, the ability to debate gun laws. They don't care. They say that this guy committed murder. I don't like who, I like who he killed. I don't like the perpetrator. I like the perpetrator. I don't like who he killed. Therefore, I'm going to overturn the results of a jury. Well, maybe I'll have to travel to another state. Oh, no, we're going to limit the right of women to travel. Women? What are we, the Taliban now? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And wasn't it, the hypocrisy of it is so in your face. Remember when the same people that are rooting for all this were saying, no Sharia law. That's what we got. That's what this is. These are the mullahs, and they're sitting in judgment of what you can do as a free person in this country based on their interpretation of their religion. It's sick, but it's totally on. It's totally happening. And it has everything to do with your safety and security, your ability to make medical decisions, your ability to prosecute people for murder. They don't like it. Oh, well, I'll pardon them. People commit fraud against their own viewers, their own listeners. We'll pardon them too. Steve Bannon.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Trump isn't back. He never left. He picked Kevin McCarthy as his speaker. He owns the Republican Party, and his minions run the show. Hell, he's even back on social media. He's coming. You think a few liberal Republican billionaires are going to change MAGA's mind? Or weak DC consultants?
We, in the end, will win.
For all the noise about other Republicans, you know the truth. He's going to do what he did in 2016. Destroy his Republican opponents one by one.
Little Marco.
Even this guy. Maybe especially this guy.
Ron DeSanctimonious.
The lies. The disgusting insults.
Blood coming out of her wherever.
The racial provocations.
Look at my African American.
It's all coming back. And it's time to choose once again. Where do you stand? For America or Trump?
1 year ago, the world was bracing for the fall of Kyiv. Well, I just come from a visit to Kyiv, and I can report Kyiv stands strong. It stands tall, and most important, it stands free. Freedom. There is no sweeter word than freedom. There is no nobler goal than freedom. There's no higher aspiration than freedom. And all that we do now must be done so our children and grandchildren will know it as well. Freedom. Let us move forward with an abiding commitment to be allies, not of darkness but of light, not of oppression but of liberation, not of captivity but yes, of freedom. May God bless you all, and may God bless the heroes of Ukraine and all those who defend freedom around the world.
Last week, we sent a questionnaire to every Republican presidential candidate asking about Ukraine. And maybe the most newsworthy response that we received was from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Quote, "While the U.S. has many vital national interests," DeSantis writes, "becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute is not one of them."
The Republican backlash to DeSantis calling it a territorial dispute when Russia invaded Ukraine was immediate.
This is not a territorial conflict, this is war of aggression. I just think that's a misunderstanding of the situation.
It's not a territorial dispute any more than it would be a territorial dispute if the United States decided that it wanted to invade Canada.
This is a chance to stop Putin before it gets to be a bigger war, and China's watching.
Just because someone claims something doesn't mean it belongs to them. This is an invasion.
If you don't get that, you're not listening to what he's saying.
You know, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president.
Everyone should be given an opportunity.
Excited to see members of Congress incite violence against law enforcement, enjoy armed insurrections, and the big lie? If so, thank a MAGA Republican. If you think election results should only count when Republicans win, thank a MAGA Republican today. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1873. That was the day the single most deadly incident of the Reconstruction era occurred, known as the Colfax Massacre. As many as 150 black Republicans in Colfax, Louisiana, were slaughtered by white supremacists determined to destroy advances made by the formerly enslaved. Results of the 1872 gubernatorial election in Louisiana had been hotly contested.
Fatality. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Would you support a federal ban on abortions? I would simply say that the fact of the matter is when you look at the issue of abortion, one of the challenges that we have, we continue to go to the most restrictive conversations without broadening the scope and taking a look at the fact that I'm 100% pro-life. I never walk away from that. But the truth of the matter is that when you look at the issues on abortion, I start with the very important conversation I had in a banking hearing when I was sitting in my office and listening to Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, talk about increasing the labor force participation rate for African American women who are in poverty by having abortions. I think we're just having the wrong conversation. I ran down to the banking hearing to see if I heard her right. Are you actually saying that a mom like mine should have an abortion so that we increase the labor force participation rate? That just seems ridiculous to me. And so I'm going to continue to have a serious conversation about the issues that affect the American people. And I'm going to start by pointing out the absolute hypocrisy of the left on one of the more important issues.
What kind of word salad was that? What the hell was he talking? That's Tim Scott, who started an exploratory committee to be the presidential nominee for the Republican Party in 2024, saying a bunch of words. I don't even know do you know what he was talking about?
I'm genuinely
confused,
at a complete loss as to what his point could have been. No clue.
He's blaming Janet Yellen for his mother, considering, I don't know. I have no idea. All right, so let me just tell you that on Monday, Dominion and Fox will be in court. Dominion is obviously suing Fox for defamation, for reckless disregard for the truth, for lying, basically. And the trial will begin at the point where the judge is going to instruct the jury, before they even say word one, before opening arguments, that there is agreement that Fox lied about Dominion. And so all that's left for you, jury, is to find out if they knew the truth and willfully disregarded it or recklessly disregarded it, or if they knew they were lying, if they knowingly decided to lie. That's it. That's all that's left for you. That and the damages. Okay? And that's what's and it's not going to be on the TV, which I find just so annoying and such a disservice to the American people, because if you're trying to show that a giant Jagunda media outlet owned by a foreign guy named Rupert Murdoch was literally in the know about the fact that there was no fraud in the election and that they chose to lie about it anyways, and that they withheld evidence that they knew about it anyways, and that they have taped phone calls with their guests asking them, what proof do you have? And they go, well, I can't prove anything. And then said it on the TV that what they couldn't prove was true. Then I think it should be on the TV so the people who watched it can watch this. But that's not the case here. That's not the case here. All right. Brother David.
Well, sister, this is so funny because, as you know, I'm memorizing On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, since there's only a couple of vowels between banning books and burning books. And I just rolled it open just as you were talking to lesson number 10. Believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding light. Fasten your seatbelts.
What a great line! I didn't ever, pay attention to that one. But that is the say it again. 10. Say it again. The biggest wallets.
The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding light.
That's deep, man. that just jabs right at the heart of it all, because that is what's going on.
Kind of, sort of, totally. Oh, come along with me. We go together, and there you're sure to see how we should protest. I mean, it's so here, and it, as you said, it's here. Transparent. Yeah. It is so here.
It's here. It's right in front of our face. I said they went there. We have to go there too, and there is here, and we are here. We are here, and look, the only thing left for us to do is to literally go after the lawbreakers. Clarence Thomas has finally broken the only law that applies to him in his job, and he's decided to break that law. And that's where we started the day, right? So you have to follow the money. You have to follow the money. If you want to get rid of corruption, then you have to start with the people who are buying the corruption, who want the corruption, who encourage the corruption, pay for the corruption.
Exactly, sister.
And that's why I'm looking at France, every day. I wake up, CNN is covering the French, revolution, basically. And I see how smart they are. They're peaceful. And they're going to the right place. They're going to the place of the richest people in France. And they're saying to them, time for you to pony up. Time to pay.
Exactly so. Here's another thing. I have had to work Tuesdays recently, but I finally got to listen to Trey Crowder and Mark H.E.'s weekly skews. And their guest last Tuesday was Gloria Johnson.
Oh, really? That's wonderful.
And it was kind of wonderful. But it made me think of something I said to Comrade Sean long ago. You need to be a guest on that show, Randy.
On Trey's show?
Yeah, on his weekly skews where they cover the week of the news before.
I would love to. I'll make it known.
yeah, because she was so there, and it's so the kind of thing we all need to be doing now. We've got to speak up, and I believe we are.
We have to show up.
Pointing the way.
We have to show up. That's what happened in Tennessee. People showed up. People had enough. Exactly. That's what's happening. People are showing up at school boards. People are showing up in the gallery of state houses. And people are starting to understand it's all happening in the state house. That's the place that was the most gerrymandered for the benefit of the corporations that toil in those states. And that those corporations are never going to be happy until we have monopolies again. And those monopolies control everything. They control production. They control the oil. They control the gas. They control the railroads. They control the medical. They control everything. Okay. And until and unless they are stopped, they will not stop. They want to turn the clock back to the robber baron days, where there's like
at least
right. And that was not a free time in this country. It was not a good time in this country.
Absolutely not. And there are still more of us, but since the minority is, for the moment, ruling, that majority of us needs to get out there and be there.
That's right.
And make our voices heard.
That's right.
And I believe we are.
That's right. And what's crazy is people didn't even need, to have somebody tell them where to go or what to do. They all knew. They all knew exactly where to go. They all knew exactly, whose house to show up at. They knew exactly which,
Precisely.
Right. People know. They know something's wrong. And some people are smart enough to say, let's go to the legislature. Let's sit in the gallery. Let's watch what's going on. We don't have any local news. We don't have any local newspapers anymore. And that's why they chose that place to, exert their power. It's what they've dreamt of.
For a very long time, and that's certainly what's going on with Social Security and the last tranche of money. Number 19, be a patriot. Set a good example of what America means for the generations to come. They will need it.
Yeah.
Love you always.
Love you too. Xavier in Las Vegas.
Hello, Las Vegas.
That's what it says, Las Vegas.
Oh, I might have messed that one up.
What is it, Los Angeles?
I think it might be L.A.
City of Angels.
Ah.
It is L.A. I apologize.
Come on now. And Randy, I just want to say hello, happy Friday.
Thank you.
And I thank you. And thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
And just real quick, I just want to say, hey, are you safe over there? Do you have your little floaties and stuff?
No, we're okay. I'm a few miles up the road. It was just like somebody turned a faucet on and just never turned it off, though. I will say the airport finally opened this morning, so everything's okay.
Oh.
But, I mean, nobody came to get us. Even Mr. Man with his little white hullabaloo boots, he didn't show up, okay?
Well, he can't because the airport was closed, or, you couldn't even do it. So.
Right.
Hey, Randy,
yeah.
I just want to wish you happy weekend. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing. Spencer in West Virginia.
Yeah, you just have a wonderful program. But I would like to know why the justices that are making their decisions, they're practicing medicine without a license.
Bingo.
Then you have three judges that lie. So we have the Supreme Court. Yes, no one's above the law. I beg to differ. I think the Supreme Court is above the law. That's why they have acted the way that they do.
Well, there is no law except the one. And finally, we have proof from the man who helped Clarence take the bribe, saying he gave the bribe. So we're halfway there. So let's see whether or not we can hold Clarence, the Supreme, accountable for the one law that applies to him that he broke. Let's see if we can do that much in this here country. Let's see if we can do that. Anyway, Joe Biden went to Ireland and got a standing ovation. It was magnificent. Be proud.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazzar. This time on Code WACK, how does diversity in politics affect the policies that impact our everyday lives? What challenges do women face when running for office? And once they get there, how do their life experiences influence their political work? To find out, we spoke to California Assemblywoman Pilar Schiavo.
It really is so important to have diversity in your legislature and any decision-making body, right? And you see that in our women's caucus where, we're really prioritizing women and children. Childcare and affordable childcare is a huge priority for us as a caucus. I can't imagine any other caucus or group of folks in Sacramento really prioritizing that if it's not women. And just things like that. The Women's Caucus is the one who's, sponsoring these 17 bills around reproductive rights and justice and healthcare. Women who have these kinds of frontline experiences know what it's like to experience pay inequity or harassment in the workplace or sexual violence, attacks on bodily autonomy. Having those firsthand experiences and then going to Sacramento and having an opportunity to make policy and shape policy to address those issues, I think is critical, and it's really exciting.
Get the full Code WACK story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WACK wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Today's actions will accelerate our ongoing transition to a clean vehicles future.
Biden EPA kicks off next phase of electric vehicle revolution. Crunch time and contentious negotiations over water cuts from the declining Colorado River. Plus,
the smoke is definitely toxic.
Massive plastics fire in Indiana expected to burn for days.
Is that Indiana State Fire?